Hello everyone. I thought I'd do a time lapse for just to preview a new add-on I've been making called Quad Maker, but it actually kind of turned into a full-length video where I also UV mapped and textured it. I decided to do that in Blender. I might carry it on into Substance Painter, but it was good enough for the demonstration. But first of all, I suppose I better talk about Quad Maker and why I made it. It's just a few kind of simple tools, edit mode tools that kind of, when combined together, give you a fairly fast workflow in Blender. So they're very simple tools like filling faces, which you can see in this time lapse here. When it flashes up orange, it's actually kind of filling a face with quads. So there's filling faces. There's kind of an extrude tool that isn't very feature rich, but is just kind of quick. And it does things like loop cuts as well, which just involve as fewer mouse clicks as possible. And what I do is I've kind of combined those all into a tool which you can use shortcuts with to kind of make the process a bit faster when you're retopologizing things in Blender. So it's quite similar to Quad Draw in Maya. That was kind of where the inspiration for it came from. So you can see it at work here. I'm kind of working through the retopology of this little shuttlecraft model. You can see kind of the red flashing up there when I'm deleting faces quickly or filling them in with orange, and I'm either filling them in gaps of geometry. So the fills are just mainly quad fills. You can fill in triangles as well, but it's just kind of like designed. It was originally designed to be quite a simple tool that just filled in quads, but I kind of added things like the loop cuts and smoothing tools as well along with it. And a little bit of kind of highlighting there. You can see the delete tool working there as well. And this is kind of a good demonstration of the fillability, where you can kind of add little dots and then extrude them and fill them as you go. It's not released yet. It's in test at the moment. And I'm hoping to release it in probably about a month's time after a second round of testing with a big group of testers. It's probably got about 100 testers now, which is a bit daunting, but they've given me loads of good feedback and spotted bugs that I'd have missed. But it's kind of reaching that level of maturity for a first release now. So I'll be putting it on Blend Market soon. So with this model, I decided just to kind of model the front windows. I didn't decide to model all the panel cuts, but I just wanted to kind of look at the windows there. I'm kind of using a sub-D modeling approach, which is subdivision surface font modifier over the top of a mirrored mesh. And the base model I sculpted in Blender. My sculpting skills aren't anything to write home about, but it was just to kind of give a demonstration of the model, and also for me to test out the add-on to make sure that there weren't any glaring bugs that I can see as well. So you can see here that I'm just going along. I've kind of created the base kind of surround of the windows there. I'll be adding the windows in a bit as well, but I kind of start from the top and work down. I kind of start with the general topology of the whole model, and then I kind of work in the details as I go, which I understand is kind of the best way to do it. So I'm just kind of refining a shape here. I end up doing kind of those recessed panel lines that I've sculpted in. as a bump matte texture in a minute. I'll be texture painting those on, just because kind of in my experience it was the kind of the quickest way to do it. It kind of gave the right level of detail for the model I was intending. So you can see here as well, I'm using Quad Maker to create the faces. So I'm dropping in kind of single vertices, which I've got a little tool for, and then I'm filling in those faces as I go with quads, just all in that Quad Maker tool. And then I'm kind of showing you the kind of the warts and all process here, I suppose, of how I kind of went and topologized those windows and how I tried to get the edge flow correct. So I'm sure people will have lots of different interpretations about whether this was the correct way of going about it, which which I'm interested to hear. But I was just going to do the windows kind of just flow as well as I could, using quad only topology as well. There's another little add-on that I'll be putting out for free as well, called Analyse Mesh, which just gives you a very quick breakdown of whether the mesh has got all quads and what what edge poles are in the mesh as well, just so you can get a quick sort of appraisal. So that will be popping up in the speed video there. It was just flashed up there for a moment, but I'll show you again as well when I start using it more. So kind of sped up videos are always kind of like a bit of a strange thing for me. I don't do many of them because I kind of feel that they hide a multitude of sins, really. That it all looks really easy sped up, but you can see where I've kind of made mistakes and gone back and redone it. I haven't all kind of done it in one go at all. But I designed Quad Maker just to kind of make me go a bit more quickly in Blender, so I didn't have to move tools to retopologize the mesh, because I did a kind of a few models earlier in the year, and I found that kind of the retopology stage was taking me by far the longest. So I just wanted a tool that would give me a few simple tools that I could quickly use to get all together, just to retopologize mesh. And I think this probably took me the actual retopology probably took me about an hour and a half to actually do once I'd planned it out, of course. The sculpting, it was a very rough sculpt, took me about half an hour. I used Perspective Plotter, which is another one of my add-ons, to camera match the image that you see in the top left hand there, and I went from there basically sculpting the mesh out. So you can see here I'm kind of trying to end some of the edge flows that were going to be flying around the model. I actually do them beneath the window here, but later on, I think this was off video, but I kind of moved those edge loops into the interior part of the window recess just to finish them off even more. But I try and finish off any kind of edge loops that are going to flow around the mesh, and kind of loop them back round on one another. And I try and do that on a flat surface, which luckily this surface does have flat surfaces on it, so that there's no kind of smoothing issues, or not very obvious smoothing issues that come out with that. Here I'm kind of smoothing out the side of the mesh as well. I'm kind of deleting parts of the quads with the delete tool that I've got in Quad Maker, just to kind of arrange that more nicely. So taking out some of the edge loops and causing those edge loops to essentially loop back on one another so that they don't take over the entire mesh. You'll see me kind of like, again, make lots of mistakes and kind of go back over myself, just to make sure that I've got as good a detailed model as I wanted, at least for this demonstration. In between the windows was a bit fiddly. I could have probably made a bit of a better job of in between the windows, but again, I was kind of aiming for kind of good enough. You can actually see Analyse Mesh here as well, where I'm just analysing the number of quads, number of polygons, and overall I was quite happy with that modelling stage, so I thought I'd move on. I just having a look here at the overall flow of the mesh, and I did a few edits off video, but that was pretty. This is pretty much the overall mesh that I got that I can take forward to UV map. So that will be my next stage, and then I'll be doing some simple texturing of it as well. So here I go into that kind of UV editing stage. So that's kind of like the use of the add-on over. So here I'm actually creating some a kind of UV texture so that I can start UV mapping. So I start unwrapping the object. I'll select some of the sharper edges here as well, and I'll start by going along and marking the seams along the sharper edges. I've got a few other models that I've created like this over on Sketchfab. So this is my kind of general process that I use to create some of my kind of simple sci-fi models. Now hopefully I think I've sped up my process with the Quad Maker add-on, and I find Perspective Plotter as well comes in handy for this sort of thing as well, where I can just kind of find a sketch that I like take it from there. It's worth mentioning about the sketch. I do try and reach out to the sketches I like, the creators, and ask for their permission. I couldn't track down the person who'd done this. I found a Twitter account that had been locked out, but I'll leave a reference to that in the comments, just so that I give credit where credit's due. So I'm kind of splitting out the model into the main bits that I just want to kind of highlight. I'm making it a fairly simple UV mesh. I'm not concentrating too much on getting loads of island coverage here, but I am making the parts that I want maybe to have some more detail in the future bigger. I actually kind of spend a bit of time doing those side wings, but I actually just kind of make them all black in the end as per the sketch. But they're there if I wanted to add more detail later. And I might take it into Substance Beta just to finish the texturing off in another video. But it was a kind of fairly simple model to texture. I just wanted to kind of bring out the windows a little bit as well, so if I ever choose to kind of add more details to the windows in the future, I can. So that was the UV texturing stage. Here I'm actually going to do the texturing now. I've kind of started off by creating a basic mask to mask the black and the white parts of the model off. So I'm going to be going into texture paint mode in a minute, and I'm going to be using the sculpt but in transparency mode so I can see the panel lines, and then I'm going to go along and draw in those panel lines. So I was just kind of setting up texture paint to do this now. I decided for a kind of constant fall off, which doesn't have a lot of anti-aliasing in Blender from what I can see, but again, for the demonstration purposes, I thought this was going to be good enough, and it also keeps me in Blender for this video, so I don't kind of wander off into other applications at the moment. So I'm using the curve tool here to draw out the simple outline shape. It was a bit thick there, so I kind of reduce the radius, of course, and draw out the outline, and then I draw out the control points to give a bit of smoothness to those lines as well, so that they kind of flow elegantly. So you can see me doing a little fiddling around with this. I decided to kind of leave all the mistakes in this video as well, the warts and all really, of this stage. So I also couldn't kind of find a better way of filling out the shape than this really. So if people do know a better way of doing this, let me know. but this was kind of the easiest way I could find in Blender, just by simply getting a big brush and kind of like just filling out the black parts, because the fill brush didn't seem to want to work for me in terms of filling out sort of large regions. So I just kind of manually went along with the line tools, and I used the stabilize tools as well on the spacing brush to smooth out my the kinks that I've got in my drawing, just to kind of give that kind of solid black mask that I can start working with to texture the model. So just I'm going along here, and I'm just going to get to the end of that as well, and then I can just use a big brush to kind of paint all of that out, really. So I was just kind of just going along, and there might be quicker ways of painting this out, but for the purposes of this video, I was just going to start off by demonstrating Quad Maker, but then decided to make a bigger video of it, really. So there I am, just kind of smoothing out the edges that I might have missed, just to give them a bit more, a little bit more of a softer, more sort of machined look, I suppose. So I also do the underside as well. I didn't do much on the underside of this model at all. I just simply painted it all black underneath. And I think I tried to fill it, but I filled the whole image. So this is just going to be me painting all that across there, like that. So away we go. So that was kind of the main sort of silhouette of the image done. So I also kind of noticed that kind of the edges weren't caught by so well in 3D view, so some of the edges were still white, so I kind of went around the outside of the UV map to make sure that I got all the black covered there as well. And there we go. So I just also painted in the middle window as well, which is representative in the sketch, and kind of played around with that a little bit to see if I could somehow use the fill tool, but alas, I think I just used a big brush in the end. So there we go. But I couldn't resist kind of tidying it up either, because it kind of, I usually texture in Substance Painter, but I thought this would be worthwhile just doing all in Blender to show that it can be done in Blender, even somebody who isn't as experienced in it as me, in the texture painting side at least. So there we go. So I couldn't resist it, even though it's not going to actually show up or matter. So you see me doing this sort of thing a lot. So I was kind of overall, I was happy with that. So the next mask I created was for the panel lines. So these are the kind of recessed panel lines. So I decided to create a bump map essentially of the panel lines. But first I needed to paint out those panel lines so that I could use them as a bump map. I kind of always to and fro about whether I should model these, but again, it was quicker to create a bump map, and it kind of again served my purposes for this video, and I kind of just wanted to finish off the model that I'd started without kind of spending a lot more time on it. So you can see me here. I'm also kind of setting up the strokes a bit so that I can create this. I kind of made a couple of attempts before I was kind of happy with the approach I took. So I did start using the stabilize stroke method by checking stabilize stroke in the stroke menu, but it kind of wasn't giving me quite the effect that I was after, really. The shapes were a bit too rounded. So I ended up using the path tool again, or the curve tool, So I kind of zoomed in on here. Kind of a thing in Blender is that the path seems to be linked to the viewport and not to the mesh in 2D view. So you have to be kind of careful that you don't kind of pan off the off the viewport, otherwise the curves follow things with you. So perhaps I'm missing a setting somewhere, but I couldn't quite see how that works. But there we go. It did definitely work out for me though. So here I'm just kind of fiddling with the control points to make rounded corners, probably spending a little bit too much time on such a simple shape, but I started to get a shape that I was a bit happier with. I kind of decided I didn't want it that rounded around the start, so again I was kind of playing around with these shapes until I was happy with that. So then I went along and did the side curve as well here. Again, drawing out all the control points so that I got a smooth curve. I spent a little bit of time, again probably too much time, making sure that the curve was kind of not bumpy and as smooth as possible. But I'm kind of a bit of a stickler for this sort of thing, so I do spend a bit of time just getting this quite right, and hitting enter as I go to draw out the shape. So we might be here for a minute or two while I mess around making this work. But there we have it. There we go. Am I going to do it? Not quite there yet. I'm not quite happy with the kink, although technically you probably won't see the kink once I've drawn it out. But I'm getting mildly happier as I go along with this. So I'm just moving it just a little bit, just so that I can be happy enough with it. And then I think I end up moving that down, yeah, and then making another point in there, which I so that I can just give it that extra kind of curve point that I'm happier with. So there we go. I'm a little bit happy with that. I think I just want to make it a little bit thinner. So I kind of line up the viewport again and remove that one and add in a smaller vertex there. So yeah, smaller line, sorry. So that was me being a little bit overly detailed in a detail that people probably won't notice. But there we go. So that curve was a lot quicker. And then I kind of just drawing out the panel lines that I sketched out on the sculpt. I could, of course, kind of, I suppose, went to the extent of baking these details in, but the sculpt wasn't that kind of level of detail that I think that it would have carried off well with. So I decided to draw these on manually. But I suppose if I'd have spent a lot more time on the sculpt, then I would have baked the details in. But I wanted to be a little bit more precise, just getting these panel lines correct. So I'm just doing some of the final panel lines now. So not many panel lines at all on this mesh. I'm just kind of playing around with the control points. And I think I decide to leave this last control point because it's kind of cutting into that black area. So I leave that one. So then I just add a few more panel lines a lot more quickly than the first one. There we go. And then I also, to make this kind of a complete part, I kind of surround the aft exhaust or booster unit with a final curve, just to make that one piece, or appear to be one piece. And then I'm adding kind of other little recessed notches, I note, before I move on to kind of the top hatch that that I sketched onto the sculpt. And here again, I'm using the curves and just pulling those control points out to give a smooth curvature around it. And I think I play around with the thickness as well until I'm happy. And then I'm also kind of doing the middle kind of split in the hatch as well, kind of getting that correct as well. You've got to go back and fill out that surrounding one that I'd forgotten there as well, and then adding that line back in there as well. So that was I think mainly that bit done as well. So what I'm going to do is go back over to the shading tab, and I'm going to use this black mask that I've created, not as a color map but as a bump map, kind of reducing the strength of that, just to kind of give that impression of a recess. And I'm going to mix that in with the other map as well, to give an overall bump map as well, so that like the sides as well are recessed as well. So you can hopefully see that in the video. It's a little bit subtle, but it kind of gives you those panel lines that you're after, or I was after. So here as well, I'm just kind of filling in a couple of details that I missed on the mask, on the black and white mask. So I wanted that kind of top notch of the cockpit as well black. So just kind of going along and filling that in. So again, I thought I was being a bit messy here, so I think I just go back and redo that. So that's a bit smarter. But I could have used decals and everything, but it was just a bit more of a more time-consuming step at this stage. So I thought it kind of gave the right overall impression for a fairly straightforward model. So the next mask I'm going to do is kind of just filling out the windows. So this is again a fairly simple mask. I'm just going to black out the windows using the UV map. So again, nothing fancy. I'm just kind of going along and filling out those manually. So again, not overly tidy on the UV map, but it kind of gets us to where we want it to go. So again, I'm mixing in sort of a shiny texture as well using that map, and swapping around inverting the map just so that it gets the right part. And if I look at the preview, that should have masked the image. I'm just saving all the images to make sure that they don't get lost. So that just gives a slightly shinier set of windows. I did experiment with kind of things like glowing windows after I'd done this video, so that you could kind of see a little glow coming from the windows. That came out quite fairly nice, but again, I thought this would do for the moment. And I'm just using Blender's built-in HDRIs to light the image here. So I've also created two different textures for the black and the white so that I can control the roughness and the metallic values separately for the white and the black parts, but again keeping it simple. So I noticed a couple of imperfections in the painting, so I'm just going back to fix those. And in a minute, the last thing to do was kind of the aft exhaust or the boosters. I just decided to again keep this fairly simple and add in kind of a blue glow to the booster. So again, I'm creating another mask for this, and I'm going to go over to texture paint mode and paint that in. I did notice a small problem at the back of the mesh that I quickly fixed. It kind of corrupted a little bit of the UV map, so it's never good to go back really. You've got to kind of make sure that your modeling is correct before you move on to the UV map in an ideal world, but it was only a small change, and it's only a basic model, so I decided to go back and change it, and I fixed the UV map after this video as well, so it wasn't the end of the world. But you can see here that there was a bit of an error in the subdivision, and that was because there was some vertices that had snapped together, and they weren't kind of properly filled out underneath. So I decided to kind of repair this with the masking tool. So with the knife tool, sorry. I kind of just used Blender's own tools just to kind of quickly repair this with a knife tool. But to keep the quad topology, I kind of edge slid those vertices across so that they'd maintain the UV map as much as possible. But that'd smooth things out. There was a little bit of an error in the UV map now that you can probably see on the left hand side, and I just go in and manually fix that at the end after the video. So here I'm just kind of creating a very basic shape again for the booster. It took me a while to kind of, because there wasn't like you can't see the booster in the sketch. I'm kind of making this bit up as I go along. I just kind of wanted this very simple booster shape for the rocket. I didn't spend a lot of time thinking about how best to do it, but I just wanted something that would flow with the contours of the model. Here I'm very just roughly filling it in again. I didn't like the top too much actually of this, so I kind of am going along to kind of fix that. Wasn't kind of too happy with the contour. I kind of played around with trying to get rid of that anti-aliasing, but again, for the purpose of this demonstration, I kind of left the anti-aliasing in. I did like that sort of having a flatter shape along the top, so I decided to formally fix that with the curve brush again. So you can see me here just kind of playing around until I've got it kind of flowing into the shape again. There we go. That's just a lot of time on a simple shape, but I just want to kind of get it right. So again, in the shading tab, I just mix this with an emission texture. So in Blender 4 and above, you can use post-processing in the viewport. The bloom effect in Eevee is not there anymore, but you can add in a glare node. This is me just setting that up. I'm kind of just setting that to bloom, and then I'll switch back to the shading tab, make sure that it's set to the emission is set to high, so that booster starts to glow. I kind of pretty much finished with this stage now in Blender. I might take the model forward, export it, put it into Substance Painter to add a few more texturing effects. I'll carry the maps over into Substance Painter though, which I might do another video on. But that's the overall model pretty much done. So apart from the sculpting stage, that's pretty much the process that I follow for creating a lot of my 3D models. There we go. Thanks for your time. Thanks for listening.